So, hello. Welcome to welcome to our Q&A session with the highly intuitive kids. This is we're so happy to have Rebecca Fiscal Kramer here, who's written her new book, Let Them Move, and everyone's seen it on the flyer that we've been posting out there. And we wanted to welcome her to our group to talk through the book because we think this is such an important topic. We're bringing this information to parents as another tool for your parenting toolkit. The best way that we can help our highly intuitive children is to give parents tools, information to educate yourselves, so then you can go out and be advocates for your kids in the school systems, out in the communities, even within your families, because this is so important for us to know. There's no guidebook for parenting highly intuitive kids, and trying to figure it out alone is sometimes, can be kind of a daunting task. You just don't know what to do or where to turn or how to handle it. So by us coming together with the Q&As in this group and the resources that we send out in our Facebook group, we're going to be able to help give you resources as parents to understand more what you can do to help your child and your families, and then to go out and, like I said, to be a great advocate for them. So we're doing this one with Rebecca today, and we're going to have another one next week and more to come. So stay tuned. But right now, I'm very happy to have Rebecca here. And welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Ellen. Thank you so much for making this happen. It's a wonderful thing to be able to start having these conversations outside of my little work bubble where I'm constantly having these conversations, but to extend it, out to anybody out in the world who's interested. So I so appreciate you creating this platform. It means so much.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for being here. So I want to read Rebecca's bio, and then we'll just go into our talk, and then we can open for any questions that people have. But this is just a wonderful topic. When I saw this book, it resonated with me so deeply because with all the studying and the information I've learned about highly intuitive kids, they just carry a lot. They can carry more energy in their bodies. And so movement is a great way for grounding and helping the center, and then helping, like Rebecca's book, for greater learning opportunities. So we're going to dive into that. But Rebecca is a author, and she's a former teacher and an occupational therapist. And she's a former public school teacher and currently an occupational therapist in the greater metro Atlanta area. She provides a school-based occupational therapy for preschool through high school students and private therapy at a pediatric sensory gym. She has led several workshops for teachers to address the sensory, behavioral, and development needs of children. Additionally, Rebecca has been trained in a variety of energetic healing modalities, including vibrational synergy levels 1 and 2, or light alchemy levels 1 and 2, and she's a Reiki master, and she engages in a variety of meditation and yoga practices. Rebecca has always been intrigued by the complex layers of physical, mental, emotional, and energetic aspects that make up a person. And as a result, she takes a holistic approach when she's trying to help, when she's helping individuals to reach their goals and to live fully. And so that is so wonderful. And everything that she's about aligns with everything this group is about. So that's why we're so pleased to have her here with us today.
Okay. Thank you for that introduction, Ellen. That was lovely. Thank you. So really, okay, so here's the book. And the main purpose of this book, the main inspiration, was recognizing, so as a former elementary school teacher and having had that experience and becoming an OT, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but recognizing what teachers are up against, the paradigm of thinking that has been, channeled into our institution of education, and trying to provide, stories and evidence and interventions that wouldn't be overwhelming, that would be kind of a first step. Like, I really just wanted to provide something to start changing teachers' and parents' perspectives of children and why they're doing the different behaviors that they're doing, what's happening within them, understanding their development, understanding what makes a learning brain work the best. Because we've gotten so far away from that, we're so far away from what kids really need in schools, that I just wanted to see. Then there's nothing out. I mean, there are books about getting kids moving and stuff. They're much more research based and technical. I wanted it to be a user friendly book for any teacher, across, somebody in the Midwest, somebody wherever. They can pick up the book and use something immediately. It wouldn't feel so overwhelming, because I know how overwhelming it is to be a teacher. It is, definitely the hardest job I will ever have in my life. So it's a noble pathway, and I have a great deal of respect for teachers, and I wanted to provide something to help them, to help them with this. So, and I loved on Ellen's website, Highly Intuitive Kids website, the quote at the top really captures this idea that Albert Einstein: the intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. And that is absolutely true. And one of the ways that we can honor and address what's naturally occurring within children is allowing them to move, or providing movement activities, because that is what they were born to do. They were born to come into the world to move. It feels weird being a published author. I didn't expect that. It was an inspiration. It was hard work, but it also it came through me. I definitely understand the concept, but the way the book was put together was a much orchestrated by more than just me. But I'm going to read a passage in the book that, that kind of, one of my favorite parts of the book, and it kind of captures the essence of what I'm trying to get across to kids. It's chapter 4, and the title of the chapter is "What You Did Not Get Taught While Earning Your Teaching Certification." And I have a quote at the beginning of each chapter. This one's by George Bernard Shaw. He says, "We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing." When I think about my childhood, I remember coming home from school and spending the next 3 hours outside in the woods behind my house, creating forts, creek walking, making flower crowns, climbing trees, digging holes in the dirt, and hiding treasures. I vividly remember many creek adventures near my childhood home. I would balance while walking across river stones to find a spot in the middle of the creek where I could squat down, immerse my hand in the cold water to lift a rock where a crawdad would be hiding away. I would slowly move my hand, thumb, index, and middle finger ready to grab, aiming for the back portion of the crawdad to catch it before it scurried away. Once I had the crawdad securely between my fingers, safe from pincers, I would use my core strength and the large muscles in my thighs to lift my body to a standing position and leap from stone to stone with ease and grace, and gently place my prized possession into a bucket. Little did I know that I was laying the foundation for postural control to sit in a chair, fine motor skills to grasp a pencil, visual motor and visual perceptual skills for reading and writing, and self-awareness and self-regulation to precisely direct and control my body and actions within a specific environment. It wasn't until the last 100 years or so in the United States that we forgot what our bodies were born to do. The Industrial Revolution and the information age have brought to us many machines, tools, and electronics that have simplified how we get our food and how we get from place to place, how we work and what type of work we do, how we get and share information, and how we entertain ourselves. From cars to washing machines to computers, our lives have become vastly more sedate from the time we are born until we die. Our entire educational system and our entire culture has not evolved in such a way that recognizes the impact these changes have had in our children's everyday lives. So that's just a little passage from the book in terms of where I'm coming from and what I'm seeing happening. So I think it's important to recognize, for as far as, you know, a parent's perspective of what's happening in a classroom. You know, teachers are just kind of going along with this, you know, we've got this curriculum and we've got this testing and we've got all these things, and they're just trying to keep up with all that. And trying for them to like stop and think about the fact that the kids probably haven't gotten what they need even at home. You know, I want that to be thought about, and I want, and it's helpful for teachers to start thinking about, okay, that is a need for the day, and I've got these kids 7 hours a day, so it's time that I start adding in that movement piece, because they really need it. Let me just go into some of my personal background. I grew up in a small town in Kentucky. Happy childhood, and lived in a variety of different places in my life around the country and also in Mexico. And I've worked with children my whole life. I was a nanny. I worked as a Montessori preschool teacher. I worked as a camp counselor many, many years. And all of those things kind of led me to becoming a teacher. It made sense. I loved working with kids. And my first year as a teacher was wonderful. And Ellen put a passage from my book about that time on the Facebook feed. Thank you for that. Just about that experience. It was a public school, but they used a very different approach called expeditionary learning outward bound, and it was project based. And you know, the culture of the school was not to walk in lines down the hallway, even though it was an elementary school. That, you know, the kids were taught just how to, you know, to be respectful and just get to where they needed to go. They had 2 recesses a day. There was a garden. All the academics were project based, so it was all hands-on, and it integrated all the different, you know, reading, writing, math, science, all of it into a project. So it was much more cohesive in the learning process, and, you know, bodies engaged, very, very engaging. The kids were so successful in that school. And that was it was so inspiring to start my teaching career that way. And the system changed, even though it's still considered one of the best school systems in the state of Georgia. It's changed dramatically since then. And, you know, testing became much more of a focus. And, you know, they started taking away so many things from the like kindergarten, first grade classrooms and making it much more academic. And it just became a battle every day, going in and kind of struggling between, you know, this big curriculum and trying to get, you know, your first grader on, you know, on reading level. They're going to be required, otherwise they're going to fail. And I would never, ever, ever tell a parent that their child is failing when they're 6 years old, because they just don't. So I was, you know, that was like the stressful part of my job. And then I would go in and I would see the kids and I would see who they were, and I would watch, you know, what they were needing. And I would add in all this other stuff that would meet their needs. You know, we would do games and yoga and a lot of dancing and singing and all that kind of stuff that kids need. And I would sneak in like all the play areas that we weren't really supposed to have. I would just close the door and do it, because that's how kids learn, socially, physically, all of that. And so, you know, fast forward 12 years, I did go to another school system that was similar, but still a struggle. You know, I was trying to find my way. And I had the wonderful experience of having one of the kids in my first grade class, my last year teaching, was a pediatric occupational therapist, and also a highly, highly intuitive person. And she came in, and I had a highly active, you know, a lot of kids that were just ended up being diagnosed as sensory processing disorder, ADHD. And they didn't have those diagnoses coming in, but they were, climbing the walls. And I was doing my best to, kind of corral everybody to do what we were supposed to be doing. And she came in and she kind of looked at the room and she's like, I have some tools that maybe you could use. Would you be interested? She was being, trying not to step over boundaries. I'm like, oh, please bring it on. So she came in and she did a couple of workshops with the whole class and basically taught them about how to tune in to their internal engine and understanding that sometimes our engine feels really high, like we have a lot of energy in us and we need to do something, right? And then sometimes their engines are really low, they're having a hard time focusing, they feel tired, lethargic, and that the goal is to get to a just right place for learning, because that's what school is. That's a place where we're supposed to be learning. So what are some tools that we can use? So she taught them about becoming more aware, which was, just a wonderful thing in and of itself. And then we, as a whole class, just spent the rest of the year using all these strategies beyond just the stuff that I'd already tried. Some things that, I really learned more about how to get more bang for your buck in terms of movement and specific things that will help regulate a kid and get them so that they can sit and write something or, read a book or whatever they need to be doing academically. And then I decided I wanted to leave teaching and become an occupational therapist because that was just so exciting. So I did that journey and became an occupational therapist, and I started working as a school-based occupational therapist because I wanted to give to the teachers my knowledge and support them knowing how hard that job is. And I also work part-time in a private practice. The woman who inspired me to become an OT is my supervisor now. What's kind of interesting and really wonderful is everybody that she contracts with, they all are highly intuitive people. That's one of her foundational pieces. So we, as a team over there, we do a lot of tuning in and, energetic work beyond just your standard sort of medical occupational therapy. And that's been a gift. And I use that in the school system, whether anybody knows it or not. I just connect in with the kids all the time and the teachers.
Well, and you know what, Rebecca, if I can
Sure.
Right now, because I love that. And that was, I think, why this book resonated with me. And, you being able to bring that part of yourself into, your work and all. Can you go and talk a little bit about your journey of how you came to find you were highly intuitive and how it shaped your life and then, how you now tie it into using it in your work? I think that's a beautiful story because some parents are trying to understand, this with their child. And part of what we're advocating for is if kids can stay connected from a young age, and like your whole effort with this, let them move, will help them stay connected, and we start to embrace this, how much more grounded they'll always be in themselves into adulthood, and how they'll embrace this ability and use it in beautiful ways like you're doing as an occupational therapist and throughout your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely, when I, in my more recent years and reflecting back to my childhood, I came into the world totally in tune with everything. I didn't know, I didn't really know that for a long, long, long time. Just being able to read the room, read the people around me, and also hold people energetically. That was just something I think I did even as a little child, like with my father, and that sort of thing. I have got off the path a lot through my adult life. What really made a huge difference for me was I was initiated into a yoga practice called Isha Yoga in 2009. And, talk about, getting your body involved. It has been the practice that I've, tried to keep up most days. And it keeps me grounded and regulated and aware and in tune. So and actually, while I was a teacher, this the Sadhguru, who is the leader of this this practice, he actually, if you've heard of the Save Soil movement, he's the person that is has started that and is doing that movement. It's it's a whole other thing. But anyway, he has a school in India called the Isha Home School. And I decided that I wanted to go and see what that was about. This is my spiritual practice and a school. I wanted to see what that looked like. So I went and volunteered for 3 weeks in India at the Isha Home School. And they're not teaching any religious thing at all. This is what the day looks like. They get up, the kids get up, there's, the older kids do like some sort of exercise. Everyone does yoga. There's whole school kind of assembly. And then there's, they have theater and martial arts and music and doing all these things. All their learning is hands-on. They really honor the kid. They use the Montessori method, which I have had experience with, and it's a wonderful, wonderful way of learning. And what I saw were probably the most just self-aware, confident, gracious, beautiful little children I have ever met in my life. They were and it was like you could see their brilliance. It didn't matter. Like every single one of them, you could just see their genius. They were just so aware of who they were and what they had to offer, because they were allowed to be that. And they had so many ways of engaging their bodies and their minds and their energy body into the schooling experience. It was beautiful. So that was an example of something that would be like, our what I would love in the long term here in the United States. So the book is just kind of the beginning. There's that. And then I just, I didn't really think of myself as like a highly intuitive person. I didn't use that language, but I was always drawn to these other modalities, like Ellen Mathis, who's on the call here. She started this group called Moonrise, and it's all about, learning your medicine, learning, who you are as a healer and an energy worker and an intuitive. And that was an incredible program. And there's other programs I've taken just because I understand that I'm highly attuned to the energy world. Now, one thing I've learned, I've taken these programs and I'm a Reiki master, I've done these things and I utilize those things, but it's clear to me that I don't need to, just be a Reiki healer. I don't need to be doing, one modality or another. It's something that I now I have so many tools I can bring through in a traditional setting, such as the school system, where, of course, I always ask the higher self of the child's permission to do anything when I'm working with them. If I'm bringing in energy work, always ask permission. And it's between me and the child at that point. No one else needs to, or even like, I'll put in energetic information into classrooms to help, everyone, or even the whole school. And, it's the people who are attuned to that, they pick that up immediately, and it can help everyone. So, that's in a nutshell kind of how I came to what I'm doing.
I think that's great that, you're being able to, just so people can understand how these abilities can be integrated to help bring, a bigger picture, and you bring it into your work, how you can use it. Because not everybody, also, even having high intuition, not everybody wants to be a medium or wants to be out there, practicing in that way. And you don't have to. It's just showing up with that ability in whatever you're being called to do, to make that, better, use that gift to, make whatever your calling is better. So you can bring it to the world and help the people that you're meant to help. So I think that's beautiful. And then you've used it in, like you said, in the classroom settings and in this book. And one of the things that as you were talking, what is I'm just so people know, it is written geared towards schools, but what do you see? How do you see parents using this for them to go get the book? I highly recommend it.
Mhm.
How would you take this information, really apply it for parents to be able to use? Because even at home, and one of the things that triggered for me is homeschool. This is a great resource for even homeschooling. Can you talk a little
Right.
bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, having been a classroom teacher, it makes me more credible in terms of providing information for teachers, but absolutely as a parent too. Um, uh, I I could share about my own daughter, who is highly intuitive, empathic. As a young person, I mean, I struggled in school to a certain degree in an elementary school and didn't feel very good about myself. And so I'm sensitive to that. And she has always been considered a struggling learner. Well, at least she was as a younger person. And she was one of those kids that would soak up everything in the classroom, come home and fall apart, frequently, and have a hard time even having social time with kids after school because she was so spent. And because of that, I have, there were many times where I'm just like, okay, you got homework. We're not going to worry about that today. If your teacher has a problem with it, if you don't get it done, I'll talk to them. We're going, what do you, let's get outside. Let's do some things. Take a rest, and that sort of thing. And I always let her know that she's super powerful, amazing, and that she can't let grades dictate who she is, and that I don't care what her grades are. I really don't. And all I care is that she is a growing, learning human being. And what the school says, there's at the end of the day, if they're not reflecting back to you who you are, then forget it. I'm going to reflect back to you who you are. You're this amazing, powerful, in tune, brilliant human being. And so that kind of helped her. And then I got her involved with, she does work with a Reiki person who kind of does therapy and Reiki with her. And she's given her all sorts of tools. And she is now also initiated into this yoga practice, and she loves it. She's doing it twice a day. I mean, it just so resonates. And it helps her stay grounded in her body and feel good, and I have noticed a marked difference since she started the yoga. Just, she doesn't come home depleted, and she's actually doing really well. She's a senior in high school now, and she's doing well. And she's excited about life, and she knows that, she knows what she wants out of life. So you really, I know it's hard because the system is such that, it's grades, testing. So what? Like in the long run, so what? Like we want the kids to learn. We want them to do, well, but the grade doesn't dictate that. That doesn't necessarily reflect who our kids are and what they can do. So that's one thing. I also am a huge advocate for reducing screen time, both in school. I mean, now it's the sad thing about the pandemic is that teachers got so used to computers. The kids are coming to the classroom and you working on computers. That's not beneficial. But also a lot of at home, I know it's a struggle for millions of families across the world to get their kids off screens. It's so addictive. But you're creating a pattern that they're just going to be sedate. They're checked out. There is a wonderful way to use technology, but we have forgotten that that we are also dynamic beings that need so much more in our lives. So getting, kids out and moving every day, not being so afraid to let them out and play, getting them involved in, whatever sports that feel right to them that they're interested in, or if they're not interested in sports, just being able to get outside and go for a walk, or, for younger kids, like if that's not feasible, you need them inside, to have them build a fort in the living room. Create, I put in the book, I talk about sensory pathways in schools, but you can do that at home. There, if for kids, when I work with kids that are like having a lot of struggles that are maybe, diagnosed with sensory processing issues or ADHD, I teach different strategies that you can use, heavy work, anything that requires your body, your muscles, you're basically pushing or pulling on the joints in a very intense way is what heavy work is, and it addresses the sense of proprioception, which is a sense that we don't talk about, but it's just as important as sight and hearing and smell. It's just as important as any other sense that we have, and we need to address that sense every day. We need to stimulate it, and that's why when you do weightlifting or yoga or whatever it is, one of the reasons you feel so good is because you've created, you're stimulating the chemicals in your body that help bring your body to a state of homeostasis. So providing those types of activities, whatever that may be, I mean, whether it's chores or sports or just getting, younger kids, you can get them to do all sorts of things. Older kids, it's a little trickier. But wall push-ups, whatever, that kind of thing is really helpful. And the other type of activity that is particularly beneficial for engaging the whole brain are cross-lateral movements. And that's like, I have several of them. The one that I always have kids do, and adults, is this one. And I'll, have them count by fives or do the ABCs or maybe recite a poem or whatever it is. For older kids, you might have something else. But what it basically, you've got this, the corpus callosum in the middle of the brain, and the two sides of the brain start talking to each other. When you get brain coherence, that's a word I've learned recently, but which is where everything's online, then you can access all the centers. You're able to learn better. You're able to access all that information coming in from the outside much more clearly. It's just a physical way of getting the body to a state of homeostasis so that you can receive information. So
I love that, Rebecca. That's very good. Just something that simple, activating both sides of the brain. I mean, that's something easy parents can do, and even at schools they could have, if they had break time or
yeah, I even teach kids to do what we call crazy eights. So you're taking your thumb and you're doing the infinity symbol, and you're just following with your eyes alone. So I don't know if you can see that, but you're just doing this. And so having your eyes follow that pathway, just the eyes, can make a big difference.
Wow.
And they can do that even when the teacher's talking or whatever, that kind of thing. So
Well, these are wonderful tips. And one of the things, I'm going to go back to what you're saying, because I absolutely 100% agree with you about the fact that keeping the grades in perspective, because one of the things that when I was researching and finding out, like for intuitive kids, their learning styles aren't always the way the classrooms are set up to engage, just like what you were saying. And because of that, they may not do their best, but it does not mean they're not smart. And like you said, if it doesn't reflect back in the value, their self-value, don't let their self-esteem get so tied to the grades that they're getting. I think that's such a big point, and for parents to keep that in perspective, and even for our highly intuitive kids, because classrooms and things aren't always set up in their favor. So we don't want their self-esteem to get hurt by thinking they don't add up, or they're not, their grades aren't as good as they think they should be, or the school's thinking that they should be. It doesn't mean they're not going to go out and accomplish amazing things. So they just keep it. I think that's an important point for parents, to keep it in perspective.
absolutely. We just have to get away from that thinking. And as far as like approaching teachers and stuff, if you have your kids in public school, especially if you are, I mean, probably most of the people on here are highly intuitive, really creating an intention of what you want to accomplish with the interaction with the teacher, and putting in the that gracious and, like understanding, and, I'm just wanting to, just to help all the kids here and help you too. I mean, it's going to help the teacher if the teacher can figure out how to allow more of what naturally occurs within children to occur, then the whole teaching experience is just going to be better for them. So, coming and offering research or offering the book or maybe offering to set up a sensory pathway in their school and then teaching the kids how to do it, like offering some things, because the teachers are working really hard. And so it's hard to have parents come in, but like just offering some things so that, it can start shifting the needle for how the teachers are coming in and thinking about the kids, and how just having some things in place to start shifting things.
Right.
So
Yeah, I think that's great. And I would encourage anyone to go out and get your book, and just if you have an administrator teacher, just a resource for them. We've listed it on the Highly Intuitive Kids website. We've put it out there because we think it's a great resource just to start raising awareness. People get it, just kind of open their minds about different options. Because I love talk about the cards that you have with the book.
yeah, so in the book at the beginning, there's a link that you can plug into the computer for a download. And basically, I want, because everybody's a different type of learner, and I always use visual. I'm a visual and kinesthetic learner, so I always like to have visuals. All the images from the book are in picture card format for teachers. They can download, and then they can post. There's everything from some of the brain break activities to classroom jobs that get kids up and moving and engaged in natural ways, just different things so that the classroom can use, or at home. You could use these picture cards at home for sure. It's a visual of what the child can be doing, and that is a huge support for children, especially young children. They're if you have a model for them, showing them, they're much more inclined to do it. And it's also a great way to remember. You could put a chart at home with the different things, and there it is on the wall. Oh yeah, let's do our cross crawls or whatever it is that you're going to have your kids do. So I wanted that to be available for teachers, but also it can be used at home too.
And even adults and older kids, because these can translate to active exercises or movements that older kids can do as well, correct?
Yes. Oh, 100%. So some of the activities are more for younger kids, but all the like brain gym stuff is from birth to death. I mean, it's for any age. And then classroom jobs, that kind of thing can be for you might want to alter it for older kids. But I do want to, I was just remembering the editor of my book, who also was a high school teacher and a bicyclist and does yoga, and she lives in Guatemala now. So she was just really interesting to me. After she edited my book, she said that it had such an impact on her just as an adult, like in terms of what she does for a living and how much activity she gets and how she feels, that it actually changed the way she started to behave as an adult. So, the first half of the book really is about that understanding, just being a human and what human beings need, and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah. I'm great you said that. I'm glad you said that, because that was one of the points I wanted to bring out, because this is great for adults too, because movement is for everybody. Everybody needs to move. And I was just sitting here visualizing when you were doing the cross exercise with the elbow to the knee. That would be a great family activity, family time, just to get together and let's activate both sides of our brain and do some of these activities together. So then the kids understand that it's important for anybody of any age to keep that movement just incorporated as a foundation going.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't have to be an athlete or be a part of a sports group. There's so many things you can be doing. Again, going back to where we came from as a human race. I mean, our lives used to be so physical, and evolutionary wise, like having that good feeling after doing something intense is in part, so you can go out and hunt and do something really intense and then be able to continue on and bring, the food home and enjoy, it just gets you in that right place. But yes, that we just have gotten so far away from where we started as a species, and not necessarily in good ways. So
I was also going to open up if there's any questions from the participants too. You can take your hand off mute or raise your hand, and we'll bring you in to talk with Rebecca as well. But yeah, I love that you did that, because it's such a nice bonus to have those activity cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad that's useful. I was, having been a teacher, again, I know my audience, because I when Ellen and I we've gone through this self-publishing school. That's how we connected, which is kind of neat, that it was meant to be. But one of the things they talk about, when you're first starting writing your book, is what would you, as the reader, what would you want to know? And if I'd had this book as a first, second, third year teacher, it just would have made such a difference in how I moved forward and thought about things. Maybe I would have gotten even more frustrated with the system. I don't know. I would have left earlier. I don't know. But yep.
I have a question for you. So in trying, what would you say would be the best route? I guess, well, you kind of answered the question, but I guess I want to go a little bit more specific into it. The best route of introducing some of the core information from your book into the schools. Like, what would you say is the best route? And then let's go with that question first.
Well, I would find somebody in the school that you already know might be interested. I had the great fortune of my principal. One of the principals at one of the schools I work at is highly intuitive, energetic. I just found this out last year, and I'm like, oh, and very much outside of the box thinker. And so I just took it to her, and she just read it in one night, and she's like, okay, I want every teacher in the school to have this. And I have certain teachers that it was like they were on my launch team because they were really interested, and other people that aren't as much. So if you can find the people that are going to be more inclined to be interested, get them interested in starting to do some things, get them to read the book. And then from there, hopefully it'll grow from there, because it's too hard to, if you have folks that are just they're not there, they're not interested, they've got all these other things, it's just not going to happen. So finding your way into the people that are going to be receptive first, and then fostering, like keep connecting with them about ways that maybe you can support, or having conversations or whatever it is that in your school system. So
okay, all right. I think because even if one teacher kind of gets it and brings it in, sometimes other teachers will go, well, how are you able to get why are the kids liking your class so much, and how come they're learning so much more in your class than my class? And maybe they can kind of learn from that.
Yeah,
it can kind of spread from there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, the other Ellen.
Yes, thank you so much, Rebecca. I'm learning so much from this presentation. I'm really grateful for this work that you're making available. I'm curious, from the perspective of supporting intuitive kids in developing their intuition, that often highly intuitive kids and highly intuitive adults operate from a premise that it's better to be clairvoyant than to be clairsentient. In other words, it's better to get your information from your intuition. In fact, anywhere in the upper chakras, the brain, the visual, auditory, or knowing, claircognizance. And so there's a sort of bias towards certain ways of processing intuitive information, whereas the dominant sense for most folks, young and old, is clairsentience, which is feeling information from your intuition through the body. And through sensations, through emotions. And so it occurs to me that in the effort to support young people in understanding and embracing their intuitive gifts, that Let Them Move is going to offer a lot of tools to help them appreciate and make sense of their clairsentience, which again, for adults is also really lacking. The resources out there really lacking, and it's something we need to do better with as an intuitive community. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts about, like, for example, doing groups with young people where you're teaching about the intuition and incorporating movement into that, where the outcome is really embracing their intuition rather than learning in this, per the school parameters per se. Thank you.
Right. No, that's a wonderful point. And I actually have experienced that. I historically wouldn't get images. Now I do more so, but I am primarily a clairsentient person. And so I definitely, I think that, and it's interesting, we're trying to normalize the conversation about, the being intuitive and being an empath and all that. And people often think of the clairvoyance, like, because that's the most talked about thing. Whereas I think you're right that really, I mean, probably more people are clairsentient. And I would say that doing some sort of practice like yoga, and you have to find the right yoga, is a wonderful, wonderful way to attune your body for the clairsentience, and so that you're not, it helps clear things out, it helps clarify things, and so that you can feel better. And because, if you're a clairsentient person, like my daughter, Corey, who Ellen Mathis knows.
Rebecca, can I have you clarify? Because some people may not know what that means, it's clairsentience. So can you just explain that just simply?
Right, yeah. So you're, as an intuitive person, you're picking up information through feeling. Some people who are clairsentient, they'll feel tingling or vibrations, and they might feel sick to their stomach. They might suddenly get a headache, and they're picking up information from the other people around them. That's basically it. You're just getting information through the feeling, your sense of your body, through your body. And that's what that is. Okay. So, I mean, anybody can relate to walking into, or most people, I guess, can relate to walking into a room and you get a feeling. The first thing you get is a feeling. Like, you may see different things, but you can walk into a room and be like, oh, there's something off in here, or oh, this feels wonderful. And that is using your clairsentience. Or maybe you're having a conversation with someone, and suddenly you get sick to your stomach, or you just feel something in your body, and you're wondering why. Like, it's not something you had prior. You could be picking up energy information from that person.
And so how does movement help with that?
So movement, I mean, I did talk in the book a little bit about the work of Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza. He talks about, like, with emotion, it's energy in motion. That's what emotion is. And getting movement in your body can help process that information. It can help clear it. I mean, there's all sorts of different modalities. I think about ecstatic dancing. I think about yoga. I think about, just people who have to go out and run every day. It's processing all that energy that's coming into their body, and, kind of flushing it out, clearing out, and also just creating, that's homeostasis within the body, so that when information is coming, you're not completely overwhelmed by it and everybody around you.
that's beautiful, and that ties us right back, because that's that was a big point of what drew me to the book, because so many kids who are highly intuitive and empathic, when they're in the classroom settings, or even like go back to even like homeschooling home, when they have all that energy going on around them, and that energy gets trapped in their bodies and they don't know how to process it. And so by getting them to move, and the movement that you're suggesting helps them to just do what you said, process that energy out, and they become more grounded.
Exactly. And I will say right now that it pains me to see, there'll be kids that I'll watch walking down the hallway, and they're just like, they're doing all these things, they're touching people, they're just like, their system is so like, oh, and they're getting in trouble. Get back in line, keep your hands to yourself. I mean, I remember saying some of these things, because it's like, I know we're supposed to be walking down the hallway in a certain way, and they're not. So understanding that child is their body is telling you something, their system is saying, I need this. This is why I'm doing it, and not to become a behavior problem, because it just squashes their self-esteem. And then, they're going to have behavior problems, because they're so, they're just feeling so bad about themselves. We've got to stop with that,
That's 100%. I agree with you, because that is what's happening. Because there are kids, like we talked about, that are getting labeled with diagnoses, and it's not really a diagnosis. It's more that they need the movement. Give them an opportunity to process this energy out. But like you said, all of that ties back to, when it's not understood, their self-esteem goes down, because they are getting in trouble when it's not being understood that they really just need a means to process it out, so they can do, like you say, have greater learning outcomes. They can learn better.
Yes. I'm remembering that my last year as a teacher, one of the kids who, he had a lot going on, definitely empathic too, now that I think about it. And I taught, once I learned about all the things from the OT, I taught the kids, we all need different things. So we're going to honor when somebody needs to do something, right? And I would allow this child to pace at the back of the room, and he was completely engaged, 100%. He could answer any question. He would, stop and raise his hand. But if I made him sit down on the carpet the whole time, it was just like, he was so focused on feeling so much going on that he couldn't focus on what we were talking about. So allowing him to pay, not every kid needs that. So it's not like it, you have to teach. I had this talk I did with this freshman class in University of Indiana a couple days ago. The one question I got was, how do you maintain control of the class? How do you maintain control? And I understand, coming in as a new fresh teacher, that's what you're thinking. How do I control my class? Because it's not, because, if you know anything about kids, it can get chaotic. Well, you teach them that we're all different. We all have different needs, and you teach them specific ways of getting those needs met. And if that child needs to go pace at the back of the room so that he can learn and be engaged, then that's fine. Because not everybody else does need that. Maybe somebody else needs to hold something. That's fine. Maybe somebody else needs to sit up on their knees instead of crisscross applesauce, which I hear all, sit down, crisscross applesauce, like, you just allowing them to move, change their body positions, on the carpet, all of those things. We're not meant to be little robots. That's not what we are,
And there's no cookie cutter approach for all kids. You've got to engage with each child individually and see what works for them. Because I love what you said about, letting each child, one might need to pace, but engaging in that way, understanding them and knowing that not everybody can just sit there, and be engaged that way. So I love this conversation. We've come up to the end of our time. We could still go on and talk. I have to ask one other question for you, though, is like, because all of this, I love your book, and I encourage everyone to go out and get a copy of it. Have it when you're going to your parent-teacher conferences. That's a great time to take it. There's back to school night, school's just starting. If you find that open, receptive person at your school, tell them about it, have a copy, read it as a parent, arm yourself in your parent toolkit with this information. Rebecca, just one other question is, because how would you translate this? Because Rebecca and I've talked about the fact that I think there needs to be a book number 2 for the older kids, but just how would parents translate this? And when you're in middle school and high school, is it pretty much the same, or how, is it a little bit different? If you could speak on that for a quick minute.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely the concept is the same. You could easily, as a teacher, like, when you go to college, usually your professors will allow you to stand at the back of the class if you need to stand up. Like I did that all the time. And we can respect and honor, middle school and high school students to, you teach them, like, we understand that you may have different ways of learning best. So if you need to stand up or, that kind of thing, but also in, doing all the things, engaging them in heavy work by, maybe they rearrange the classroom each day, like just lifting up their desks and their chairs and moving them. It's exciting. They're doing something, doing some activity like that, or, teaching them some of the they can do brain gym stuff their whole lives, that the cross lateral movements, they can, honoring you can see your junior class checking out, recognizing that they're checking out. There's a reason they're checking out. They're not there with you. Let's get up. It's a quick thing to do. You get up for 3 minutes and do some of these physical activities that are in the book, or beyond. Teachers, there's also some YouTube channels that I included in the book too. Just, it makes it fun. And they're, again, going back to that quote, that being playful, they're going to respond to that. They're going to love that. And then their brains are going to be ready and alert for learning. So absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. And even with what you said, check out the Highly Intuitive Kids website under the resources section, helpful techniques. It also included some videos, like you were saying, Rebecca, for yoga and different activities. For parents, if you need somewhere to start, you can start with the YouTube videos. You have Rebecca's book, and there's lots of other resources out there, but just know that this is something that's needed. It's important. Every child needs to process this energy. Our highly intuitive kids need to process it, especially because they have that intuitive and empathic energy built up in their bodies. But I want to thank you, Rebecca. This was so good. It was so interesting conversation that you had. And we would, have you back anytime if parents want to dive into this even more, after and go into other information with this. But this was such a helpful resource. Really appreciate you, letting this come through you to share it out to the world, because it's going to help so many people.
Thank you so much, Ellen. I so appreciate having this opportunity to have this conversation. So thank you for making it happen.
Yeah, and we welcome you to come back to talk to our community at any time.
Thank you. I would love that.
And thank you for the participants that have been here. This is being recorded, it'll be posted for people to look at later, but we're just trying to provide as much information to parents as possible to help all of our children. And especially, we want to focus on how we can help our highly intuitive kids that, like I said, we don't have a parenting toolbook, handbook for it. So we want to give you tools to put in your parenting toolkit to help you with working with them. So thank you all very much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.